Back in 2013, years before the Steam Deck or Nintendo Switch, handheld gaming consoles were not the portable powerhouses that they've become today. The PlayStation Vita and Nintendo 3DS were closed-source systems with hardware that wasn't exactly bleeding edge. There were some incredible gaming experiences available, like Tearaway for the Vita that would launch later that year, but in terms of true AAA console-identical ports, they were few and far between. But an unlikely company wanted to change that. Nvidia had been experimenting with their Tegra lineup of ARM-based SoCs for years, dating all the way back to the Zune HD. They paired a competent ARM CPU with a mobile GPU that was more powerful than pretty much anything else available at the time. By 2013, they were up to their fourth revision, the Tegra 4, which included a 1.9 GHz quad-core CPU with a 72-core GPU. And to showcase that new chip, Nvidia would launch what was one of the most powerful handheld gaming devices made to date, the Nvidia Shield. With a price tag of $299, the Shield Portable made a pretty big splash amongst the PC gamer crowd at the time. It ran on Google's Android 4.2 Jelly Bean OS and was so overpowered at the time that there wasn't a single Android game it couldn't handle. And to solve the thermal throttling issue that continues to plague modern phones to this very day, Nvidia cooled their powerful new Tegra 4 with a fan and vapor chamber heatsink. All that combined with 2 GB of DDR3 RAM, 16 gigs of eMMC storage, a microSD card slot, and a 720p IPS LCD display made for really impressive hardware at the time. The clamshell design made carrying it around without a case easy, since you don't need to worry about the thumbsticks getting damaged, and while it's definitely a hefty unit, it's actually really comfortable to play with. Ergonomics are very well thought out, and even with extended use, it never felt uncomfortable to me. Using the touchscreen can be awkward at times though, especially when you need to type something out. But for gaming, I have no complaints, and neither did many other people at the time. And speaking of games, while it could run anything in the Play Store without issue, Nvidia also ported over some AAA games exclusively for the Shield. The full versions of Half-Life 2 and Portal 1 run flawlessly and really showcase just what this hardware is capable of. But how does that hardware hold up today? The Shield Portable would receive its final software update to Android 5.1 Lollipop on July 6, 2016. Most Android apps nowadays require a newer version of Android to even install. Sometimes you can get around this by downloading the APK from the internet and installing it manually, but the Shield Portable's GPU doesn't fully support OpenGL ES 3.0, so some games that are compatible with Android 5.1 still don't work. And this API support is also the reason why a lot of newer Shield exclusives, like Borderlands 2 that was developed for the Shield tablet, won't run on the Shield Portable, even though it has the raw power to do so. 2 GB of RAM is also a pretty big slowdown these days, especially when you're trying to multitask. To their credit, the latest official build of Mozilla Firefox still supports Android 5.0 and works perfectly on the Shield, providing a modern web browsing experience complete with extensions. But it is not fast, and it's pretty evident that it needs more RAM to perform its best. You really need to do one thing at a time, which is easy to forget in our modern world of Android devices with 12+ gigabytes of RAM. The YouTube app doesn't work at all, though you can still use YouTube in a web browser, but I was able to get an older version of the Plex app installed, and that actually works pretty good. The Tegra 4 has an impressive level of hardware video decoding built in, but the apps have to be coded to take advantage of it, and sadly, most of them aren't these days. VLC Media Player still is though, and any local videos you play through VLC, even up to high bitrate 1080p content, worked amazingly well in my testing. But the Shield Portable had one killer feature when it was released, and it's one that arguably works even better today than it did 12 years ago: game streaming. The Shield Portable was the first device to officially support Nvidia Grid, which would later be renamed to GameStream. This let players stream games from servers in the cloud to their devices. Think Google Stadia or Xbox Cloud Gaming, but in 2013. But unfortunately, the Shield Portable has quietly been left behind by that feature it pioneered. The latest version of the GameStream app installs, but it doesn't even open for me. But through third-party apps like Moonlight and Sunshine, local game streaming from a gaming computer in your house to the Shield Portable works better than ever. Pretty much any game you can play on your PC can be streamed to the Shield for gameplay on the go. That 720p IPS display holds up remarkably well for game stream content, and the 5 GHz Wi-Fi keeps latency to a minimum. My PC has a wired network connection, and the Shield Portable is on a dedicated 5 GHz SSID, and that combination results in less than 5 milliseconds of latency on average. Those powerful hardware video decoding capabilities baked into the Shield Portable's GPU are fully supported by Moonlight and are a big part of why this performs as well as it does. And even after all these years, the battery life is actually still pretty impressive. The Shield Portable uses a pretty unique combination of 3 Samsung 18650 cells totaling 7,350 mAh. And while there's almost certainly some degradation after over a decade has passed, they're still chugging along just fine. When you're really pushing the device playing something like this modded version of Asphalt 8 Airborne here, I get about 4 hours of usage, which for the time was pretty respectable. Standby time seems to be about 2.5 days for me, and while that's a lot less than my PS Vita, which I can leave in standby for a month and come back to and still have a charge, it's on par with what I would expect from most Android devices. But since the Shield Portable is powered by standard 18650 batteries, I've been considering pulling it apart and replacing them with more modern cells. Nowadays, you can buy 18650s with a 3500 mAh capacity, which would bump up the Shield's total capacity to 10,500 milliamps. If that's something you guys would be interested in seeing, let me know in the comments down below. It would, however, mean that the device takes even longer to charge up than it already does. The Shield Portable comes from an era long before USB power delivery, or USB-C for that matter, existed. It charges at a measly 10 watts and takes roughly 3 hours to come up to full. So should you buy one today? I got mine in the original case for about $100 on eBay, and as much fun as I'm having with it, I really can't recommend you rush out and buy one. We are at the very tail end of Android 5.1 having some semblance of software support, and while game streaming and emulation work pretty well, there are more modern devices like the Steam Deck that do those things far better. I personally picked up mine for nostalgia, running some older Android games that aren't compatible with newer devices, and using game streaming. I actually owned a Steam Deck for a while and found it too large and bulky to, say, take on a plane just in case I happened to have some downtime on vacation, and I thought it was just overkill to use it just for game streaming around my house. So I thought I'd try out a Shield Portable, and I'm glad I did. It's an interesting piece of gaming history that has sadly been forgotten by its creator. Nvidia has left the Shield ecosystem to wither on the vine, and their Tegra chips are almost never used in consumer devices anymore. With one exception, the Nintendo Switch is powered by a Tegra X1, the modern successor to the chip found in this Shield Portable. So I guess in a roundabout way, you could call the Shield Portable the grandfather to the Nintendo Switch. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.